Good afternoon, everybody. Pigskin Pete here. Happy Friday to everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of Behind the Camera with Pete. And I've got a very special guest for you guys today. This is somebody that I've been looking forward to because this guy offers a different dynamic than the other YouTubers that I've done so far. Most of us YouTubers and the ones that I've interviewed, we are guys who just decided to turn on a camera one day as hardcore fans and make ridiculous and almost unwatchable content and hope that people watch. This guy actually has a legitimate background in sports media. So without further ado, we will bring on the one, the only voice of college football, Mark Rogers. How you doing, sir?
Pigskin Pete, I appreciate you having me on, but you know what this means? This means that people are going to check out my YouTube channel and expect a whole lot more than maybe I'm delivering.
I don't know, man. You deliver a lot. You call yourself the voice of college football. I call you the hardest working man in college football because, well, for a lot of reasons. On YouTube, sure, because you're uploading and doing live shows constantly. I mean, I just was a part of one a couple of minutes ago, and you had 2 on right before me, back to back to back. And I know just how hard it is to get one person to come on behind the camera and schedule that, but to schedule 3 different people day after day, back to back, I mean, I don't even know how you do that, to be quite honest.
Well, we just keep reaching out to different people, and certainly there's a lot of good folks like you out there that have good things to say about college football, and I love to mix it up with different people and get different perspective. And I had a thought process, this was probably 4 or 5 years ago, where I started my YouTube channel, and I did all the college football analysis, and nobody seemed to complain about it. But if Michigan and Wisconsin were playing this week, then I'd do my Wisconsin and Michigan research, and I'd cut my preview, and then I'd move on to Clemson and NC State and on down the line and get to as many games as possible. And then at some point I figured, hey, why don't I bring on people that know a little bit more about their team than I do, and we'll get some insider information.
All right, yeah, definitely. I definitely want to get into the origin of the channel and ask you some things about the YouTube channel for sure. That's what this is all about. But let's just start before the YouTube channel, because I just mentioned in the intro there that you actually have a legitimate background, unlike most of us scrubs, in sports media. So can you give us just a brief synopsis of how your career started in sports broadcasting or maybe writing? I don't know. Maybe just give me a little bit more information on exactly how this whole thing started with your career outside of YouTube.
Yeah, so from the time that I remember watching sports, which was about 8 or 9 years old, is when I really dove in and just went from nothing. I basically had no influence around me to start watching the games and really dig into it, to I just went full throttle out of nowhere. And suddenly, I'm looking at box scores in the paper and I'm memorizing Super Bowl statistics and all that sort of thing. The switch just flipped. And so from the time I was in junior high, just into high school, I wasn't one of those kids that had no idea what I wanted to do. I think it might have actually been not necessarily a good thing that I knew exactly what I wanted to do. From the time I was 12 or 13 years old, I either wanted to be a sportscaster or a sports writer. So I went to Penn State University, majored in journalism with a minor in broadcasting, and that's where it all started in regards to just getting as much exposure to everything, taking television production, working in the campus cable station, got a couple internships at the local ABC station. Fortunately, during my first internship, in just going through the process of going out to, so this was located in Akron, Ohio. So we're going to Cleveland Browns, Indians, Cavaliers games, covering high school football, Kent State, Akron U, going to all that stuff, is that just in the process of interviewing all those players and doing that, if you're in college, you want to build a resume, because we're talking pre-internet. There was an internet, but nobody knew how to use it, and it was dial-up. But everybody, basically, if you wanted a job in the field, you needed to prove to somebody that you were good enough to actually get hired. There was no startup business, I'm going to do this on YouTube kind of thing. So you had to build a resume tape. And to build a resume tape, you had to get an internship, and you had to really work your tail off and get some exposure on camera. Well, nobody as an intern would get on camera typically. So you would do mock interviews, and you would do mock stand-ups and mock anchor segments from the anchor desk. But fortunately, they actually put me on the air after a couple months. So I got some great experience covering high school and, like I say, Kent State and Akron U, college football and basketball. So I actually was able to build a resume tape that was, well, if I look at it now, it was pretty atrocious. I would be, not able to watch it right now. But it was good enough to get me my first job, which was kind of an amusing story that I was pounding the pavement trying to get my first job out of Kent State, and I knocked on all sorts of general managers' doors to try to get a look. And I went to a little station, WNCO in Ashland, Ohio, big country music radio station that also started a TV station. And so I got a meeting with the news director and the station manager, and little did I know that they were actually interviewing me because I was just there to talk to them, and they didn't say we've got a job opening. And so I'm just selling them on, how much I love sports, passionate about sports, and I will just run through a wall for them to cover sports. Meanwhile, they've got a news anchor position. So they asked me, how do you like news? And I told both of them, I despise news. I want nothing to do with the news. This is exactly what I told them. So the next thing out of their mouths was, well, we got a news anchor opening. So then I had to try to backpedal out of that because I needed a job.
Yeah.
So to make a long story short, I got the job. Now, of course, I asked them later, I said, why in the world would you hire a guy to be a news anchor reporter who told you that he despises news? And they said, well, you read the teleprompter better than anybody else that we auditioned. So I got the job. I was there for 3 years, and the one good thing about that job was just great experience covering stories, whether it was murder trials or city council or whatever it was. But on the side, I got to do play-by-play for high school football, basketball, all sorts of crazy stuff, swim meets, and just a ton of exposure just being on the air constantly. And I went from there to Columbus, Mississippi. I got a job as a sports director at a CBS station in Mississippi, and that's where I became better acquainted up close and personal with the SEC and covered the SEC for 6 years. That was a great experience for a lot of different reasons. In some ways, the best job I ever had. Mm-hmm. Just going to bowl games and big SEC games and NCAA tournaments and Final Fours on a lot of fun. And I was down there for 6 years. I was out of the business for a year and a half. There were a number of personal decisions made there. And I saw a ad online. Actually, my wife at the time saw the ad, and it was on ESPN.com, and they were looking for a particular job that required what they said were producer skills and exhaustive sports knowledge. So I applied for that job. They interviewed me a number of times, flew me out to Bristol, and I made it through the 8-hour marathon of interviews, and I got hired just a month or two after 9/11, which that was an interesting circumstance in that they hired me. I was about to quit my job, and fortunately they called me right before I quit my job because they hired me, but they said, "Oh, Mark, we've had a hiring freeze. Hopefully you didn't quit your job." So my job situation was in peril for a few weeks, but they brought me in maybe 6 weeks later, and I started the week of Christmas in 2001, and I've been at ESPN for almost 18 years now.
Wow.
So what I do there right now is I'm a production operations manager. So basically, considering all of your listeners, I'm sure, are familiar with Sports Center and NFL Live and College Football Live and all those good shows. So I'm on the management team that oversees all the production facilities in terms of the personnel, the camera operators, the video editors, all the people that edit the videos, play back the videos, and a lot of roles and positions that wouldn't necessarily be understandable by everyone out there listening. So we've got a staff of about 650 people working on all those shows. And, it's been a lot of fun, and it's a great place to work, and it's been an amazing experience.
Yeah, and that's a pretty impressive story. I mean, you should be really proud of the, where you started and where you are now as far as your career goes. But this is the reason I do this behind the camera series, because I always seem to learn something about the person I'm interviewing that I had no idea about. So now you are, again, opposite of somebody like me who's a fan-based, definitely at least a little bit biased in my case, fan of a team. And I center my entire YouTube channel around that. You're more of a guy who covers things almost as if you were an ESPN or a Fox Sports or one of these major outlets. But you mentioned that you went to school at Tennessee. Is that what you said?
Kent State.
Oh, Kent State. Okay, I heard you wrong. I'm sorry.
Kent State. The Golden Flashes, the mighty Golden Flashes.
All right, so
I won about 3 football games while I was there.
So are you from Ohio?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so that makes more sense. I know you don't, I know you've mentioned it, but you don't broadcast it, and you certainly don't lean the Homer way when you're doing these shows on YouTube. But you're an Ohio State guy, and you may not know this about me, but on both of my parents' sides of the family, I have multiple aunts and uncles that live in Ohio, and I've always lived in Ohio. I spent every single summer, at least 2 or 3 weeks, growing up in the state of Ohio, Akron, Canton, and Cleveland. And I spent a lot of times going to Cleveland Indian games, and they were all Ohio State fans, all my cousins. And so, of course, I never became an Ohio State fan because I was a Clemson guy even as a kid, because I had older brothers and sisters that went to Clemson, and I just grew up that way. But I can tell you one thing. There is no other state, especially in the Midwest, that is more of a football state than Ohio is. And so the fact that you're able to be a lifelong Ohio State fan and even a current Ohio State fan and not really let that bleed into your broadcasting on YouTube is a small feat in itself, I would have to say.
I find it a bit of a this happens at times, that I'll have Ohio State fans that will get really mad at me, not knowing what I'm root for, and they'll just, because I'll be critical of Ohio State, and they'll get on there, and I've been called an Ohio State hater, and I find that as a badge of honor when I hear that.
Yeah. Well, so on the next subject here, this is what we're really here to talk about, is the origin of the YouTube channel. So you just got done explaining to me your entire professional career outside of YouTube, but what was the reason? What was the catalyst that made you decide, you know what, I'm still going to have my 9 to 5 with ESPN, and but I want to give myself a voice to broadcast to the world. I mean, was this a crazy decision that you made? Do you regret it? I don't think you regret it, obviously. I think you take a lot of pride in it, and as you should. But, what was the spark that really made you start this YouTube channel? And not only start it, because starting it's one thing. Anybody can turn on the camera and make a video, but sticking with it for the long haul and continuing to dedicate a lot of time, a lot of personal time when you could be doing other things in your life, to making YouTube videos.
Yeah, so first of all, the 9 to 5 usually stretches till about 2 or 3 in the morning. But anyway, 40 hours at ESPN Plus. So what happened was that, so even though I left the business from a broadcasting standpoint, being on the camera, in front of the camera, that was never a passion that left me. That's something that I always wanted to do, and it was just life circumstances and a better opportunity behind the camera and working from a management position was the thing to do with a wife and 2 kids. But the passion remained to do what I'm currently doing on YouTube. So I made a number of efforts to get on air, which it's a whole bunch of different, maybe interesting, maybe not so interesting stories that I could share. But I had heard about, and we're talking about this being like 2010, 2011. And so anything digital from an ESPN standpoint, was in its infancy. They were putting digital stuff out there, but it was very much Wild Wild West, just
right.
kind of sporadic and not in the same manner that they do now, that knowing that that's the future. So anyway, I got a call one day from somebody there at ESPN that ran the digital department at the time, and they were in a meeting and were just looking for talent. And they said, they were asking around, and somebody said, you need to talk to Mark Rogers. Now, I have no idea. They never told me who that was that said, you need to talk to this guy and you need to get this guy on. So I was tracked down there at ESPN, and I started to produce some digital content that went on ESPN.com. So what I would typically do is they would have me come in. So they auditioned me, and I did an audition. They also looked at my resume material, and they said, great, we would love to put you on. So I would come in, let's say, on a typical Major League Baseball night, NBA, NHL, or a combination of the three, come in for a shift. And this is while I'm doing my management job. And what would happen would be they would have me write an intro for all the games that were on that night. I'd cut the intro in front of a green screen with a suit and tie on. And then I would just wait for the games to go final. I'd be tracking the games, the stats, and everything that's going on in various games. There might be 15 or 16 games going on. And as soon as the game went final, they would want highlights to be on ESPN.com. So they would send me a shot sheet. So for anybody listening that doesn't know what a shot sheet is, it's basically a play-by-play of what you're going to see on the video. First inning, Yankees lead 3-0. Derek Jeter single center, blah, blah, blah. And then you, obviously, if you're any good at what you do, you embellish upon just the facts you see in front of you. You get your certain style, and you go to town. So I'd take that to the audio booth. I'd cut the highlights, the voiceover, and they post that to ESPN.com. So, unfortunately, that and they pay me pretty handsomely, considering I'm just taking 5 or 6 hours of my time watching games and cutting voiceovers. So, meanwhile, that's running parallel with my management job and conflicted with it most of the time. So most of the time they wanted me to come in to do that job. I would have to say, sorry, I've got to do my regular job. So that kind of vanished on me. But in the process of doing that, I got a call from a buddy one day because I sent him a link and I said, this is what I'm producing for ESPN.com tonight. And he had no idea what my background was. He just worked with me in a management position. And he's like, Mark, you don't need ESPN to do this. Well, and I understand it's hard to do it because you've got two conflicting departments that want your time at the same time. He said, you can do this yourself. It's not 1975. You don't need anybody to hire you. He said, you got to start a YouTube channel. I was like, yeah, I guess I could. And that's really where it all started. And it started with nothing but me holding up an iPhone 3 in front of my face and clicking on, and I didn't even know how to trim the video. Mm-hmm. I just clicked live and started talking, and I was not one of these people that that prepared for weeks and months to go on and do a YouTube video or fine-tune the video with all sorts of graphics. And so I was sitting on my couch and just started cutting videos. So the lighting's bad, the audio's bad, the picture's bad. It's all bad.
I can relate.
It's not even edited.
Yeah, I can relate.
It's just a rough cut, and there it went, and that's where it started.
And it's been how long? When did you make your first video on YouTube? What year was that?
I posted my first video in January of 2010.
Okay, so I think you did say that. So now we're going. Going into your 9th year.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the grind that goes into it. It's easy to get discouraged, especially early on. But you kept with the grind, and you're starting to see the benefits of it now. Now, obviously, nobody's going to be happy with where they are. The sky is the limit here. But I think that you really built yourself a name on YouTube, especially when it comes to college football. I don't really know anybody who does a more informational type of show that's non-biased, like you, that gets really more respect from other video makers than you do. Now, that might just be me. I don't know, but I haven't heard a single person ever say a negative thing about your channel. And that's a testament to you and the hard work that you put in. Now, being that you've been on YouTube for 9 years now, you've seen YouTube change a lot. This is something that I'm asking everybody that calls in to these behind the camera series, and I'm going to ask you the same thing. What are the big changes that you've seen happen just as for the overall YouTube landscape? And is there a possibility, or are you looking at other mediums potentially to either coincide with your YouTube channel, or maybe even to switch over to at some point in the future?
So that's a great question, because I think that anyone would be foolish to build a product, build a brand, build a business, and rely on one platform or one would continue if I didn't make a penny to make a video once every 3 days or once a week or whenever I felt like it. That's what it would turn into. I am doing this to, yes, build the channel, build the brand, and turn this into something pretty large. So in regards to YouTube, it's always been my thought that I, in a sense, locked myself into YouTube. It's my main source of viewership and therefore revenue, but I don't believe that's the way to go. So certainly with some of the restrictions placed on us recently and the ones that are forecasted and coming down the line, it's probably been a good thing to force me to look elsewhere into other software and products that will allow me to live stream. Certainly Facebook has to be an opportunity that I need to take more advantage of with the enormous social media presence there, and it continues to expand on the video side. So yeah, it's always been my thought that if I could build this out in an ideal fashion, that YouTube is a spoke. It's not the hub, but just because of time limitations and resources, and it being the easy and most accessible way and most popular way for people to consume video, it's just been the way to do it. But I don't think that's the way that it should be approached.
Yeah, I agree. I had the same conversation with Uncle Lou, and I mean, I think a lot of times, people like me especially, you probably don't go on air and do it because you're more focused on just the college football thing. You don't complain about YouTube a lot. I do. But at the end of the day, I mean, listen, YouTube is really kind of a monopoly right now. Now, we have Twitch and Facebook and other mediums coming along. They're going to probably compete with them in the future. But there is no other medium other than YouTube right now where you can do live streams and just upload regular videos. It's either one or the other with them. And they offer a lot of different options, and obviously they have the fan base, the viewers, to come along with it to build your brand. But of course, like you said, with any good business, you have to branch out, whether it's through websites or other mediums, and diversify. And you're well on your way to building a big enough fan base to make that a feasible thing. I still have a long way to go before I do that, so I completely agree with your take on that. All right, so last question for you here. Well, actually, I have two quick questions for you here. Now, I wasn't going to bring this up, but you did mention it, and so I hope this isn't too personal, but you mentioned your ex-wife is, I think, the term you used. So you're obviously not married anymore.
I did. Yep.
I believe, if I'm not out of bounds here, that you do have children. I think they're probably, older. They're not, small children. Is that right?
No, are the gray hairs showing on the side? Is that the giveaway right there?
No, I'm just assuming. That's
they are 22 and 20. Yes.
Okay, great. That's great. Congratulations. Now, all the other guys I've had on here before, they're either married with small children. Actually, I think almost all of them are married with small children, or they are younger guys and have a significant other. No, I haven't had a single guy on here yet. And so I always say this, you have a full-time job with ESPN. You have a second full-time job with the YouTube and the other things you're doing with broadcasting. Is there time for Mark Rogers to date? What does that look like?
Oh boy. So let me put it this way. So absolutely. For all the people that make comments about how much I'm working on YouTube, I think the only thing that they see is the videos that are going up there. And like you were making reference to off the top, that there's a whole lot more to it than just clicking record and posting videos, especially when you're trying to build it out as a business. So I've got a salesperson I just hired a few weeks ago, got a marketing person that I work with. And so this other stuff's just getting underway, but it's taken up most of my time.
Yeah.
So hey, full disclosure here is that I dated a very, very tremendous, lovely woman for 9 or 10 years. Oh. And I hope that me doing what I do here with YouTube did not factor into the end of our relationship, because I don't believe it did, because I always put her first. And certainly during the time in which, and it was a long distance relationship, so she wasn't always right here, but that certainly caused some conversations to happen about what this would look like in the future and what it could become. And she not being necessarily as optimistic as I was, but I think some of it's being put together right now in a way that I can see it exploding. But that put a strain on that to a certain extent. But she would agree that I always put her first, and I never did anything on YouTube that took up our time. But that certainly slowed me down. And I'll say right now, I'm starting to date someone else. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've said this before. So, listen, I'm not even 40 years old yet. I'm 38, but I've been with my wife for almost 23 years. We were high school sweethearts.
Wow.
We've been married for 12 years, but been together for more than half of my life, and we have 2 small children. I've always said, man, that if God forbid, and I love my wife, and I certainly don't think anything's going to happen. We're in a good place, but if anything were to ever happen where we were to split up, I don't think I could go back into the dating scene. I wouldn't even know how to do it. I would probably end up, if I was in your situation, if my kids were grown and me and my wife split up, I probably would end up doing 24-hour live streams on YouTube, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And either that, or I'd do 12-hour live streams and spend the other 12 hours sitting at the bar, as crying in my beer and mumbling about the great relationship that I used to have. So I envy that. I mean, congratulations on the new girlfriend and everything. I don't know how that would look for me. I think it would end up bad, though.
Yeah, so we'll see how this turns out. She's certainly a hard worker herself, and again, when you talk about all those things that you might be doing if this your relationship ended that way, and you were live streaming, certainly don't think that I haven't been down that route myself in terms of what the life has looked like. So it's something that you have to come together with somebody and understand what the expectations are. I think it's all about communication and understanding what the other person wants and what they're willing to take, and it's give and take. And if you have an understanding of what's important, then maybe that particular person's not the right person because of what their goals are and what yours are. But if you get to a place where, as long as you've got that communication open, and they know they're the priority, and they know what to expect of you, and vice versa, then I see good things. If you've been doing it this long and everything's still good, and you're growing with your channel, then certainly I'm not right there to see how things are going, but it sounds like everything's good.
Yeah, it is. I mean, listen, I've said this before. My wife doesn't necessarily support the YouTube channel; she tolerates it. But I understand that. Nobody asked her whenever she married me if she was going to be okay with her husband going and putting his face all over the internet and facing the criticism. So listen, I love her. But what you said was well said, and I can sleep very good tonight knowing that Mark Rogers has some love in his life, because I was a little bit worried about you, sir. And
you and others, yeah.
All right. So the last question here before we get off, just a quick question. Something else that I've been asking every other guest on this show is there one particular experience that you've had since you've been on YouTube that you would not have had you not been on YouTube, that you can point to and say that was a great experience, or maybe it was a terrible experience? I don't know. Either way, can you point to one experience that you wouldn't have had if you hadn't started the Mark Rogers TV channel?
Well, I know that I really want to have more experiences with this in terms of personal experiences, because you know that you get to meet, and when I say meet, I put that in quotes, meet a lot of people out there. And that's nice to interact with people, get to know them and have conversations. But I'm not going to try to sell myself as the ultimate people person, because I'm not, but I do love interaction with people, love relationships, and that's what life's all about. So having those in person is better than anything. And doing what we do, you kind of tend to get locked into this world of, I'm on the laptop all the time interacting with people that I can't see and feel and touch. So I wanted to become more of that as I expand and go places and travel and take this to another level. So in terms of experiences, it's been great to meet a lot of people online. I'm scanning all the various people that I've met online, trying to figure out, and I can't come up with anybody that I've actually met in person. I'm kind of isolated up here in Connecticut, in comparison to the rest of the college football world, at least. So I've met some amazing people, and certainly would like to meet many of them in person. Mm-hmm. And maybe that'll happen this college football season. Yeah.
Well said. And the same for me. And I've said this before. I've been lucky enough to meet, people like Bobby Durkins and some of my subscribers, gone to football games with them. And we actually have, more stuff planned this year to go to a Clemson game against Florida State. And so those sorts of things would have never happened if I wasn't on YouTube. And again, meeting all these other people on YouTube, other video makers and subscribers and viewers that I never would have met, and that share the same sort of mindset and passion for the sport as me. And so if you could take anything out of what we do, I don't use the word friend. If you've never met somebody, you honestly don't really know them, but I think I have a pretty good gauge of the character of certain people online, even though if it's an online persona. And the vast majority of the people that do what we do are good people. And so I will continue to try to build those relationships and look forward to hopefully meeting them as well. And that includes you, Mark. I would like to meet you one day too, sir.
Absolutely. I found the same thing that, it's easy to rate somebody or evaluate somebody as being like a good guy or a good person just because, hey, if there's nothing on the line except having a few laughs and talking a little college football, that's easy to do. But I've actually had some people that have stepped up and, through a little bit of adversity or a little bit of a particular situation, have shown themselves to be really good people by stepping up, by, checking on certain things, just offering their help, offering their advice, maybe giving me a contact or something that would help me out that they didn't need to do. And there are a lot of good people out there that are willing to help. And I've always had that mentality as long as I've been in the television industry that, hey, if people want to ask me questions, if they want contacts, if they need advice, and certainly I've been fortunate enough to be in that place a number of times to be able to help people that want to make it in the industry. And so I'm always willing and available to help in that way because I think you generally get back what you put into life. Yeah.
And listen, if people come across a random video of mine, they might look at me and say, who in the hell, what is this? What is this guy talking about? But that is what it is. That's a situation I put myself in. But I think that people that stick around, whether it's me or you or people like Uncle Lou or some of these other guys, they'll figure out who you are eventually. But Mark, listen, I couldn't thank you more. I think that I hit a home run with episode 5. I think that this is one of the more interesting conversations because a lot of these other guys that I've interviewed, like I said, man, they're pretty much open books. A lot of stuff I asked them, people may already know, but I don't think a lot of people that are your viewers or my viewers know a lot of what you told me today. So I can't thank you enough for being an open book and being a good sport about it. And I look forward to collaborating with you more in the future. And I can't thank you enough for coming on today.
No doubt, Pigskin. I appreciate the opportunity and that you show some interest in it. And you keep doing what you're doing. It's amazing. And maybe the wife will come around just a little bit more to it. And I love that she tolerates it, but it would be great if she came around a little bit more. So, hopefully we'll get you to that place.
Thank you. I'll make sure I edit that part out of the video before, in case she watches it. All right, Mark. Listen, have a great day. You're amazing and fantastic, sir.
Thanks, Pigskin Pete. Appreciate it, man.
All right. Bye-bye. Well, there you guys have it. Listen, I had high expectations for this interview because, again, like I said with him, there's, he's not a real open guy with his personal life like a lot of us are. I mean, I'm open to a certain degree. I don't go too far with it, but he's not that kind of guy on air. It's not his thing, and that's great. And so I'm fascinated by that interview. I learned more about him in the past, however long this video is, 30 or 45 minutes, than I have in the past year and a half of watching him on YouTube. So I hope you all enjoyed it, and look forward to more interesting and compelling behind the camera series videos coming up very, very shortly. Have a great day. Pigskin Pete checking out.